The late William Gladstone once said, "If you are cold, tea will warm you. If you are too heated, it will cool you. If you are depressed, it will cheer you. If you are excited, it will calm you." Such is the beauty of tea, the chosen drink of many. Its relaxing taste, calming aroma, and enchanting appearance have made it a favourite beverage of societies since the records began. Sit back, brew up, and allow me to show you the journey of one of nature's most popular creations. This is the history of tea. Tea itself comes from a plant native to southwestern China and northern Burma. The tea plant, also known as Camellia sinensis, is easily spotted due to its short, shrubby stature and its light green leaves. Although speculated that tea leaves were first chewed by Homo erectus, the origin of the classical consumption of tea dates back to 2737 BC in ancient China. Word has it that the Emperor Shennong chewed on tea leaves for their medicinal and calming benefit. One day, Shennong sat under a tree waiting for his water to boil. As he waited, some leaves accidentally blew into the pot, turning the water brown. Instead of throwing the water away, the curious emperor decides to drink from the pot. And from then on, drinkable tea was created. The story of Emperor Shennong is regarded by most as mythical, but the first definite recorded use of tea was in the 2nd century BC, when academics used a mass spectrometer to find traces of tea in the remains held within the mausoleum of Emperor Jing of Han. The tea of ancient China was very different compared to the tea of today. Back then, the tea was thrown into a pot with other spices and ingredients, which would then be drank as a savoury broth. It wouldn't be until the Song dynasty, in around 1000 AD, where the tea was drank in the way we do it now. When you think of how our ancestors drank tea, you may assume they drank loose leaf tea instead of the more contemporary tea bag. But you may be surprised to know that you are incorrect. The first teas were produced in the shape of rectangular bricks, as they were easier to transport and were less likely to be damaged in transit. The production process was simple. The tea was steamed and then simply pressed into a brick, which would later dry out. Not only were the teas drunk, but the uniform shape of the tea bricks made them an acceptable form of currency in the outskirts of China, where coins did not hold as much value. Over time, tea became even more popular, especially by the ruling classes. During the Song dynasty, the nobility discovered that teas were best served loose leaf to maintain their delicate taste. It was then that the tea-making process gradually changed over the next couple hundred years. The tea leaves were roasted and crumbled instead of steamed. Later, the Chinese discovered that pan-frying, rolling, and drying the leaves prevented them from oxidizing, making them keep their green colour. This was the origin of green tea. Later, brewers discovered a substance in between black and green tea. By allowing the leaves to ferment before they were roasted, a semi-oxidized tea was created. This would be known as oolong tea, a green-black tea commonly made in Fujian province, which is served by itself to enhance the mild, floral taste. Even more interesting was the creation of yellow tea, which many contemporary individuals would call a happy accident. Yellow tea was created during the Ming dynasty, where some tea leaves were overprocessed, making them oxidize slightly, giving them an iconic yellowish colour. But funnily enough, it became popular since the process for making yellow tea removed the grassy smell from the tea leaves. In 1391, Emperor Taizu of Ming decided that the only tea that he would receive would be loose, and from then on a revolution of tea would begin, with loose leaf tea becoming the chosen drink, and brick tea dwindling in popularity. In 1191, the Zen priest Issei introduced teas to Kyoto, the capital of Japan. Although tea was present in Japan for the last 500 years, Issei was a man who made it popular amongst the warrior and noble classes. Over the next 3 years, the process of drinking tea became more than just for taste. Buddhist monks from China introduced the concept of the tea ceremony, an event which involves the brewing of powdered green tea, known as matcha. The monks Senno-Rikyu revolutionized the tea ceremony, establishing and suggesting features and rules involved in the brewing and preparation of the tea. Thanks to Senno-Rikyu, the tea ceremony became highly regarded for its aesthetic pleasure and became an essential of Japanese diplomacy. Naturally, whilst communication between the East and West was unestablished, the European world had little idea of what tea was. One of the first documented acknowledgments of tea was by the renowned explorer Marco Polo, who, in 1285, documents the deposition of a Chinese minister for debating the taxation of tea. But it wasn't until the 1500s when tea would be introduced to Europeans. In the 1550s, in the Portuguese colony of Macau, there was widespread knowledge of tea's existence. In the 17th century, tea gradually steeped into European culture. Caravans of camels carried tea from China to Russia every year. The first Dutch East India Company ship brought tea to Amsterdam, and it started to feature in British coffee houses. Considered a luxury item in Europe due to its scarcity, tea was heavily taxed and its high price reserved it only for the wealthy. In fact, tea smuggling was a highly lucrative profession in England until the tea tax was eventually lifted. The entire world is very much aware of how much British people like their tea, but less know that the United Kingdom made extreme measures to secure their brew. Historically, the Chinese had a monopoly on tea, meaning Europeans had to pay high prices to get their fix. The British, however, would not stand for this any longer. They learned Chinese cultivation techniques and bought tea seeds, which they then used to open their own plantations in Assam, a region in northwestern India which had the best conditions for growing tea. It was then that Britain now had a thriving tea trade, which made it more affordable and accessible for the citizens of Europe. Earlier, tea was first popularised when King Charles II married the Portuguese princess Catherine of Braganza in 1662. Tea consumption initially started low, with the only orders being a couple of pounds for the king. Yet, by 1801, tea consumption grew to £24 million annually. The British, constantly innovating, discovered a new way of drinking their brew. For thousands of years, the Chinese only drank their tea plain, with just the water and the tea leaves, in order to preserve the tea's delicate flavour. But in true British fashion, sailors transporting tea from Asia discovered that if they added sugar, which they acquired from the West Indies, they could turn the tea into a sweet and refreshing drink. When they got home, milk was also added, giving the tea a smoother taste. This is the story of why British people such as myself drink their tea in a way which confuses the rest of the world. Before they started growing tea in their own colonies, Britain instead had to buy all their tea from China, a country which was not keen on foreign interaction. The Chinese emperor at the time, Hong Li, stated that the British had to pay for the tea in silver, which they did not have enough of. To get around this, they decided to start selling opium to the Chinese to generate revenue. But that is a story for another time. So, tea has come a long way in a few thousand years. What started off as a medicinal drink produced in a small part of China became the world's second most popular drink besides water. Now, tea is an important drink in many cultures, and has been calming the nerves of generations. To put it simply, tea revives you.